Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the fourth in the series of shows on staying safe in the home. And today, along with myself, Peter Berry, Deputy Chief of the Colonie EMS Department, we have Pete Lattanzio, Chief of Fire Services in the town of Colonie. In today's program, we're going to focus on fire safety in the home. And I know this is a really important topic of yours, Pete, being in the fire services. And smoke detectors are a really important part about staying safe in the home.
Absolutely. Smoke detectors, anybody who doesn't have a smoke detector is crazy. For the few dollars that a smoke detector costs you today, it's very cheap insurance that you can put in your house. Early detection is going to be the key to surviving a fire. And again, you're only going to get that through a smoke detector. And the old philosophy before was one smoke detector in a house was enough, but that certainly has changed over the years. And you should have smoke detectors on every level of the house, and actually every bedroom and outside of all the sleeping rooms, so that you get that early warning and everybody knows that there's a problem in the house. A lot of the detectors that you can buy today, the systems you can buy today, are interconnected. So if a detector goes off downstairs, the detectors in the bedroom will go off at the same time. So it's going to give you that warning throughout the whole house if there's a situation going on. And today I brought a couple of detectors along with me, and I know you just heard this one chirp. That's the early warning, or a warning device that's built into these detectors to tell you that if the battery's working or not, and this battery is near the end of its life, so the detector is designed to chirp, like it just did now, to remind you to change the battery. And unfortunately, we go to too many houses. We've had too many fires in the town, and not only here in Colonie, but all across the country, where we've gone in and found either no smoke detectors, or the smoke detector was not working, the battery had died, or the worst thing that we see is, I need a new battery for the remote control on the TV, I need a battery for one of the kids' toys, and they take it out of the smoke detector, and it ends up in the wrong place. If this is not working, it's not going to give you that early warning that there's a problem in the house.
You bring up a good point. They're battery operated. How often should you test the smoke detectors that are battery operated?
You should really test your detectors. They recommend weekly, but even if you do it monthly, you're ahead of the game. Unfortunately, most people, again, just put these detectors up and they kind of forget about them type of thing. They don't really think about it until they're cooking dinner and they burn a little bit of something and the detector goes off. That's another time that we see people disable these detectors and they forget about them. What I usually recommend to do is, if you're going to do that, if you're going to take the battery out, put it on the kitchen table. If you've got kids, put it next to their dinner plate to remind them, kind of gets them involved too, but it reminds everybody that the detector or the battery's got to go back in the detector so that it's working. But they should be tested, again, optimally weekly. I would say minimum at least once a month. And then the big thing is making sure the battery is changed yearly. Whether you're hearing that low warning device or not, we should be changing those batteries out to make sure that the detector is working the way it's supposed to.
Now, I know when you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and other places to look for smoke detectors, there are different types and styles out there. Any recommendations as to whether or not you should get photosensitive, ionization, ones with lights built in? What do you think about those different types?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of different varieties out there. There's a lot of different gimmicks built into these. You can get them with the lights. Generically, these should be mounted on the ceiling of your house. That's where we want them. It's the highest point in the house. That's where the smoke's going to go. Unfortunately, if there's a lot of smoke in the house and that is going off, that light feature may not do a whole lot for you because it's going to be obstructed by the smoke. It's more important for that detector to be activating and going off for you. There's some controversy or some talk between ionization versus the I'm drawing a blank.
Photosensitive.
The ionization opposed to the photoelectric photoionization detectors. Some of them will trip quicker than others. Some will react to steam where the other one won't. Some will react to cooking smoke. Again, if you're starting to run into those issues in your house, you're better off to relocate the detector. We've had a lot of people who we've gone into the house, found the detector's not working, and why? Well, it's because every time I take a hot shower, it goes off.
Yep.
Well, move the detector. Once you disable it, it's not doing any good.
Right.
So you got to take a look at where the detector is going to be mounted in your house and see if you're going to have any of those types of issues as to what detector you would rather see put into the house.
Yep.
But both of them should work equally the same for you.
Right.
This is a detector that we did take
it's
out
pretty
of.
melted.
This one took a little bit of heat. This was in a fire. This was in a person's residence, and there was a fire in the house. Battery's still in here, and this detector actually worked for about another year
Wow.
after the fire. They're designed from plastic. They're not going to last real long in a fire. And this one did melt up. It did alert the family that there was a fire. The family was able to get out, but the detector melted and actually fell to the floor and fell under some debris. That's why it's still somewhat preserved.
Wow.
But these things don't last real long in a fire.
Yeah.
But they're not designed for that. They're designed for that early warning to give you that warning to get out.
Yep. I know you're very passionate about smoke detectors, Pete, and you did a tremendous piece with Channel 13 that I got to tell you, when the woman had a little tear at the end because her kids wouldn't wake up, I was really put back by that. And I know you've got some special detectors here for kids as well.
Yeah, and Channel 13 has graciously given us permission to use that footage today, and we're gonna roll that in just a second. But the detector that you're referring to is this one here. Looks a little different than what we're used to seeing, a conventional smoke detector. This one is referred to as a kid smart detector. And what they found out, and they've done some studies all around the world, and you'll see in the videotape from Channel 13 that we did the testing here, children go into a low-wave sleep. We all actually go into a low-wave sleep, but as adults we go into it for a very short period. Children seem to go into it for an extended period of time at night. They will not wake up to the sound of a telephone ringing, a doorbell ringing, a car horn going off in the driveway, and unfortunately they won't wake up to the sound of a smoke detector going off. So with some new technology that's come out, they've come out with this. It's called a Kid Smart detector. And as opposed to the traditional smoke detector that will make all kinds of noise when it goes off, put this one back in even though it's chirping. Children will not wake up to that. So what they have found is they've gone to these voice recorded ones, and they actually want a parent's voice on this. And in the literature, they actually recommend that mom do the recording. So subliminally, we all must be afraid of our mothers at night. But this has worked very well. And I'm the kind of person, for me, seeing is believing. And when we went into these houses, these kids did not wake up to the conventional smoke detector. But once we brought these kid smart detectors into the room and fired them off, these kids were waking up to this.
David, wake up. It's Mommy. There's a fire in the house. You'll be okay. Remember what we practiced, David. Touch the door. If it's not hot, open it and meet us in the front yard. Remember to crawl if it's smoky. If the door is hot, don't open.
Well, that's fantastic.
It seems like a lot of information that's being given out on the recording. I'm going to take the battery out of this to quiet it down. It seems like a lot of information that's being given out on there, but again, it was absolutely amazing to watch the kids who slept undisturbed for 5 minutes, even though there was smoke in the room and the conventional detector was blaring. As soon as they heard their mom's voice on these recordings, these kids moved within seconds, and everything started to click with them, and they got out of the house. So again, to me, seeing is believing, and I'm wholeheartedly behind these type of things. And again, I think as time goes on and more technology comes out, we're going to see more of these. These are new on the market. They've just come out within the last couple of years. They don't have the ability to interoperate with each other at this point. At least they didn't when they first come out. The technology may be there now so that they are interoperating with each other. So it's another great tool that's out there. Again, the key is that early warning for a fire and letting everybody in the house know that there's something going on so that they can get alerted and get going.
Right. I think the footage really speaks for itself, and again, we've got to thank Channel 13 for allowing us to show this on our Safe at Home show here in Colonie, and we're going to roll the footage from Channel 13 on smoke detectors.
When kids sleep through a ringing telephone or perhaps a passing truck, parents consider it a blessing. But if your son or daughter slept through a smoke alarm, the outcome could be devastating. Abigail Bleck joins us now with her in-depth report. Abby?
Jim, smoke alarms are actually extremely effective at preventing fire-related injuries or death, but it's the results of 3 News Channel 13 fire drills that should be the cause for alarm. When your detector sounds off, the hope is that your child takes off, instinctively, quickly, and safely. But a News Channel 13 home fire drill found that smoke, alarms, and even parental intervention do nothing to wake a sleeping child when seconds really do count.
Fake smoke, the kind that's in a movie or a play, and we're gonna have a camera in your room.
We met with Albany County families willing to put their child to the test. And along with Colonie Fire Safety Coordinator Pete Lattanzio and child psychologist Rudy Neidiger, explained that one night during the next week we'd be triggering the family's smoke alarm and monitoring 10-year-old Josh F., 10-year-old David, and 9-year-old Josh K's reaction.
That's why smoke detectors are so important. That is your warning.
Simulation number 1. Smoke fills Josh F's room and the detector on his ceiling is blaring. But Josh barely stirs. Mom and Dad watch worriedly from the next room.
He's a heavy sleeper.
Five minutes after the alarm first sounded, we send Dad in.
Joshua.
What?
You know the smoke alarms are going off.
Not only does it take almost 2 minutes to wake Josh, but once he's finally up and moving, he exits straight through what would be deadly smoke and flames.
People just take it for granted. Nobody ever thinks their house is going to burn down. And they think they know what to do, and when it really comes down to it, a lot of times you don't. And that can be disastrous.
When we sent out the hallway detector at David's house, an equally disturbing scene.
David.
5 minutes into the drill, Mom alerts her son because the alarm fails to.
I thought he'd wake up.
A minute and 10 seconds later, David is up and out, but told us he never even heard the alarm.
It is eye-opening, and it is worrisome because no one stirred. He didn't move. The little guys in the other room didn't move. I'm not sure if my husband would have woken up.
Fire! Fire!
When the detectors sound in the middle of the night at Josh K's house, he, just like the two others, sleeps right through it.
Josh. What do you hear? What do you hear?
5 minutes into the drill, Dad is able to wake him, but not for long. And despite two of the home's integrated alarms going off and the smoke that quickly fills Josh's room,
What do you think, bud?
What are you doing?
he returns to bed, not once,
What's the matter?
but twice before finally completing the drill.
As far as a fire, you'd think everybody would get up, but he didn't, so we definitely need to make improvements. That's all there is to it.
We'll have tips on how to better protect your family coming up on News Channel 13 and 11. You can also find more on our website, WNYT.com. But for now, remind your child of what they should do if there's a fire, how they should exit, and how they should check for smoke. Have an alarm in every bedroom. Integrated home systems seem to work the best. If one goes off, they all go off. And finally, practice, 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 because, as you just saw, telling your child what to do simply isn't enough. Have a home fire drill just like at school.
We're back with the News Channel 13 in-depth report tonight. We've discovered that the devices we depend on to save our lives just aren't cutting it.
Our crew conducted fire drills at 4 homes in Albany County, and only one of the children woke up to the sound of the smoke detectors. Abigail Bleck joins us now live with results from a recent retest. Abby?
Lydia, the parents were obviously upset after the first test, but they put that anxiety to good use in every family practice. And as you'll see, practice doesn't always make perfect, but it is a step in the right direction. Every parent's dream, a child that sleeps when she's supposed to. But more importantly, gets up when necessary.
I'm glad to see that she woke up that quickly.
10-year-old Shannon Rafferty is unfortunately the exception rather than the norm, though the fact that she's a girl doesn't seem to be the reason. Several of our other volunteers had sisters who slept through the drills. Earlier this month, News Channel 13 used fake smoke to trigger detectors in 3 Albany County homes and watched alongside the parents as child
He's a heavy sleeper.
after child after child
We definitely need to make improvements. That's all there is to it.
slept straight through the blaring alarms. The danger that night was pretend, but the kids' potentially deadly reaction, all too real.
People just take it for granted. Nobody ever thinks their house is going to burn down. And they think they know what to do, and when it really comes down to it, a lot of times you don't. And that can be disastrous.
Since that first story aired, each family has been practicing. And last Friday night, we returned for a retest. Despite several home drills, just like before, 10-year-old Josh Farrell slept through the sound of the alarm.
Josh, wake up. It's Mommy. There's a fire in the house.
But when his father introduced the Kid Smart vocal smoke detector, within a minute, Josh was up and out.
It definitely makes you feel like there's a little bit of hope. I noticed as soon as he heard his mother's voice pretty loudly, that definitely, I think it got him going.
Get out of your room, down the stairs, and out the door.
Researchers believe children's brains respond better to the Kid Smart detector because it's a familiar sound rather than the shrill tone of a conventional alarm.
I think this is a great tool that's out there. If your child does wake up to a conventional detector, that's great, but if not, at least you have some options.
When we set off the alarm again at 10-year-old David Morrison's house, the hallway detector didn't wake him. But when the one in his room began sounding, an improvement made as a result of our initial experiment, Josh reacted almost immediately.
I basically thought, hey, great, it worked. I have to get them in the rest of the house.
When we first met 9-year-old Josh Coleman, he, just like the others, slept right through it.
What do you hear?
And even after his father woke him up, Josh returned to bed, not once, but twice. But new detectors and dozens of drills later, Josh woke up and walked out entirely on his own.
I think with all the practicing, it kind of, got into his head that is the sound he should listen for.
To Colonie Fire Safety Coordinator Pete Lattanzio, it's also the sweet sound of success.
My thing is life safety, and if we can save somebody from being injured or killed in a fire, that's the most important thing. And if it takes strobe lights and horns and bells and whistles, whatever it takes, as long as it works and it works for them, more power to them.
The actions those children took after waking up to the alarms weren't ideal. Many walked right through the smoke-filled hall when they should have crawled out or gone to their bedroom window. But as you also just saw, practice pays off. So now that the kids are finally waking up to the alarm, the parents will work with them on proper exit strategies. For a link to the Kid Smart smoke detector, important fire safety tips, or to read more about the first-hand experiences of these families, go to our website, wnyt.com. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks very much, Abby, for an eye and ear opening report.
Oh, you're not kidding. Great story.
Tonight on NBC.
Well, Pete, I think that footage from Channel 13 was fantastic, and I think it really demonstrates the need for smoke detectors and also the need to practice exit drills at home so that when the smoke detectors go off, the kids can get outside and meet the parents and be safe.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. Early detection is part of it. You got to know that there's a problem in the house, but then what do you do once you know there's a problem? And there's an acronym. It's called EDIF. It's exit drills in the home. And kids are great with doing fire drills in schools. Every year all the schools are mandated they got to have 12 fire drills, so the kids get into the routine pretty good. But unfortunately, very few of us practice that at home and have fire drills at home. What would you do if there was a fire? You'd hear the smoke detector going off in the middle of the night. How are you going to get out of the house? You should know 2 ways to get out of every room. Obviously, there's a door that leads to every room, but there's a window. Can you operate the windows? Are you 3 stories above the ground, or are you a grade floor? So how are you going to get out of that second way? How do the locks work? Have the windows been painted shut and not opened in 100 years? Right. We're beginning to see things, security items, such as bars put on windows. We probably see more of those in the cities, but that stuff's going to start to trickle out to us too. Most of those are now designed that have an internal latch that can swing open. So again, you have to be familiar with all those type of things. Once you get out of the house, where do you go to? There should be a central meeting place for the family. At the end of the driveway, at a telephone pole, at a tree, at the mailbox. There should be some place where everybody in the family can go so that everybody can be accounted for. If you or I were in the house and I got out the front door and you had to go out the back window, if you're standing in the backyard, I don't know that you get out of that house safely. So it's important that everybody, again, practices and goes to that central meeting place so that everybody can be accounted for.
No one goes back inside, right, Pete?
Nobody should go back inside for anything. Don't go back in for photographs, your pocketbook, your pets. They'll get out on their own. And, everything that's in that house is replaceable except for the people. So get everybody out of the house, get to that meeting place. When we get there with the fire department, we want to make sure that everybody's accounted for. Our priority is life safety. If the house burns down, the house burns down, but at least everybody got out safely, and that's the most important thing.
I think that's a great message, Pete. And I know you've got a couple of other things that are very passionate, and there are things that cause fires in the home. And I know there's all kinds of people who really enjoy candles and enjoy the smell of the candles, but they're also very dangerous, and we have to use them safely.
Again, you've summed it up pretty good. Candles seem to be a fad right now, and everybody's into candles. And candles are great, provided that they're used safely. But we have seen a large number of fires caused, again, not only here in the town of Colonie, but all across the state and all across the country that are being attributed to candles. They're left unattended. They're knocked over by animals. There's a lot of stuff coming in from overseas that the quality just is not that good, and the next thing you know, you have a pretty good fire. So biggest thing is if you're going to use candles, make sure that you're there to watch them. If you're going to step out of the house, you're going to go someplace, blow them out. These seem to be the best ones, these ones that are coming in the glass jars, and they're heavier glass jars. We've had some ones that aren't quite the same quality, and at the bottom of all the candles, there's usually a metal plate that the wick is attached to. And as the candle burns down, that metal plate will heat up, and it'll shatter the glass, and it'll transfer the heat down. If this was sitting on a wooden, here it's sitting on a wooden table, or you put it on a wooden mantle or something else, it can transfer the heat down, or if that glass cracks and breaks, you'll have all that melted paraffin running out, and you'll end up having a pretty good fire. We just recently had a fire here in Colonie. Luckily, it was caught very quickly. A woman bought a decorative candle at the holidays. It looked like a Christmas tree. And within minutes of lighting it, the whole thing took off. It was covered with a glitter, and the whole thing took off, melted down, and started the fire on the table. Luckily, it was discovered very quickly. As a result of that, we reached out to Consumer Product Safety, and we lodged a complaint about this type of candle. And actually, Consumer Product Safety ended up getting several other complaints on these. That was enough to issue a recall, and these candles were recalled from all over the country because they were dangerous. Again, unfortunately, they came from overseas, and I don't know if there's a limited amount of quality control that goes into these, but it was a real potential for problems. And the folks that had the fire here in Colonie, again, were very lucky that wasn't worse than it really was.
So again, the take-home message with candles is buy the right kind and don't leave them unattended.
Absolutely. The big thing is don't leave them unattended.
Okay. I know you've got one other item here that causes many fires in the home, and it is kind of a pet peeve of mine. Smoking is a health hazard, and I know it's also a big fire hazard as well.
Yep. We see a fair number of fires. Hopefully that number is going to begin to drop because New York State has been on the cutting edge, and we actually have legislation now that requires the fire-safe cigarette. And that's a fire or cigarette that is designed to extinguish itself if it's not being smoked. So if the cigarette is just laying there or falls into a bed or a chair, it should extinguish itself, and that should hopefully cut down tremendously on the amount of fires caused by cigarettes. Cigarettes do not account for the most fires in New York State, but they're the most deadliest type of fire. We have more fatalities caused by a smoking-related fire, and that comes from folks who are home, relaxing, sitting in that easy chair. It's been a long day. They're sitting watching TV and having a cigarette. Next thing you know, they doze off and the cigarette falls into the chair. The other thing we see, same thing. People or lay in bed, having a cigarette, and the next thing you know, that cigarette ends up in the bed. So hopefully with the safe cigarettes, it's going to make a difference. But what I brought today is 2 different ashtrays. And we talk about this a lot of our fire prevention programs, and it's kind of a quiz. I've got a glass ashtray here, and I've got a plastic ashtray, and we always ask everybody which is the safer one. And 9 times out of 10, most people will say it's the glass one because it's glass and it won't burn.
Yeah.
Well, they're right, it won't burn, but realistically, this plastic one won't either. These are designed that they will not burn. Obviously, if you threw it into a fire, it would melt, but just from having cigarettes in it, it won't burn. But the plastic one is actually the safer ashtray. And the reason being is the cigarette. If this was a cigarette and it was in this ashtray in the rest, the cigarette is always accounted for. If I forget about the cigarette, if I'm smoking it, part of it will fall into this half of the ashtray, the rest of it will fall into the back. It's not so with this type. Part of it's going to go into the ashtray, but the other half, we don't know where it's going to end up. So even though this is a glass and it looks like it's a safer one, this is the preferred type of ashtray. The other thing that's better about this one too is it's a much wider base than this one is. It's a lot more stable, especially if it was set onto the arm of a chair or close to the edge of something. It's not as apt to be tipped over and dumped as this one is. So again, people smoke, and again, I know you said it's a pet peeve of you because of the health issues, but it can ultimately be, it's deadly more than one way besides the health side of things. We have had a fair number of people killed in the town of Colonie over the years from cigarette-related fires, and again, some simple stuff. Keep them out of that chair. Keep them out of bed. If you're on oxygen, you shouldn't be smoking. And unfortunately, again, we've had some people in the town who they've got that nasal cannula hooked up.
Some of those fires you and I have both been at.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And they got to have that cigarette, and oxygen-enriched atmosphere and that open flame from the match or from that lit or from that glowing cigarette are not a good combination, and they've gotten themselves into quite a bit of trouble from that.
Yes,
So again, just common sense type of stuff, and we're really kind of excited about the safe cigarettes and hoping that we're going to start seeing a dramatic drop in the amount of fires across New York State as a result of these new cigarettes. New York State is one of the leaders in this. There's only, I believe, 4 states in the country that have this legislation into effect. I believe there's another 7 or 8 that they have legislation pending, and I believe there's several more that are in the process of drawing up legislation. And I just heard recently that the cigarette manufacturers are going to go and now make generically fire-safe cigarettes or cigarettes all across the country instead of just trying to ship some to New York and some to California. Yeah. So it looks like something that was initiated here in New York and California is going to be picked up all across the country. So
that's fantastic. This has been some very important home fire safety information for the residents of Colonie. And I know this is our 4th in a series of stay-at-home safe shows here. And I want to thank you, Pete Lattanzio, Chief of the Fire Services Division of the Town of Colonie, for allowing me to come on the show and host it for you this time. Generally, you are the host. But again, I think you've got some very important information. And again, that footage on Channel 13 for the kids not waking up for the regular smoke detectors is really important. I think having a smoke detector in your home is essential today. And I'd like to thank you for having me on the show.
Well, again, I'm glad that you're a part of this. And one more time, I would just like to thank Channel 13 also for making that footage available to us. I thought it was an excellent piece that was done. It was a real eye-opener. I know the management from the station at the time was very surprised at the results. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're making this stuff available so that we can get the word out and hopefully keep people safe.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and come back again and enjoy us here in the town of Colonie for Stay at Home Safe. Thank you.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.